one of the things that happened, or especially the last 5 years, is people assume that digital assets is somehow different than previous forms of assets. Digital asset, you can just imagine a world, okay, there is no paper. The fundamental reason why that is valuable in the future of finance is essentially lowers transaction costs, that the average person can actually improve their lives and improve their financial efficiencies.
Hello, you're watching Teatime Tuesday. I'm Rashan Gidwani. In recent years, there has been notable change in how people perceive and engage with money and investments. The emergence of digital assets has introduced groundbreaking innovations that are influencing the financial landscape. As we enter a new era where finance and technology converge, we face the challenge of navigating the world of digital assets and understanding the complexities and opportunities that lie ahead. To shed light on this fascinating topic, we have Youngro Lee, the head of Republic Asia and the founder and CEO of Brassica, who will provide insights into the world of digital assets and explore the questions surrounding their impact. Hi Youngro, I'm so grateful that you could join us today. How are things?
Great, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're in the middle of a digital asset boom. What's your take on how digital assets are shaping the industry? And how would you explain digital assets to someone who doesn't know what they are?
I think digital assets not only is, but in the future will change really everything about finance as we know it. The thing about digital asset that people might not understand is it's not just any one thing, it's everything. It's any asset that anyone owns, whether it's your house, whether it's your stocks, whether it's debt instruments, literally even your pieces of art or even wine. The idea of traditional ownership is whatever it is that you own, there's usually a piece of paper that evidences your ownership. So if you think about, just take a guess, next 5, 10, 20 years, maybe even 30 years, is there gonna be a point in time where there's no paper? And I think if you ask me, as a fintech guy and formerly being involved in finance and law, the answer is 100% yes. So how do we represent actual ownership that's on paper today into a digital format? And that fundamentally is the value and power of blockchain as people understand it. And I think that is going to be a game changer.
Okay, what are some examples of digital assets and how they're utilized?
Yeah. More forms of digital assets could be, if people heard about the term is tokenized asset, tokenized real estate, tokenized certificates, is simply a reflection of ownership in the digital form of a traditional asset. I do think that if we think about the future of finance, tokenized asset, which is digital certifications, digital reflections of ownership, will become a bigger part of the language and really just understanding.
Digital assets still scare most of us. How are digital assets different from traditional investments? And what's the most exciting part about them that sets them apart and makes them stand out from other investment options?
Yeah, I think the simplest way to understand the difference in digital assets and traditional assets is that traditional assets, the way you show ownership of that is usually, or almost always, a piece of paper, right? And depending on the country you're from or the type of asset, the paper looks different, right? Sometimes it'll be really fancy, sometimes it'll be not as fancy, but it's a piece of paper. Digital asset, you can just imagine a world, okay, there is no paper, right? And that's kind of what people talk about tokens. And all it is basically data. And how do you reflect that data to reflect ownership? So I think that's the fundamental difference, is just imagine no paper to evidence your ownership. It's on the blockchain. And that precisely is the innovation, but also the challenge, because people get scared, right? Like, if you look at our homes or titles or stock certificates, like at least you feel like I gave my money, I have this piece of paper that tells me I own something. All of a sudden I don't, and that scares people. But I think the fundamental reason why that is valuable in the future of finance is essentially lowers transaction costs, right? If you think about any transactions you do, especially, real estate is the most obvious example for I think most people. Imagine how many people you talk to either sell your house or you buy your house. right? Every single person in this step of the way has to do something with some pieces of paper, and that gets tracked. Imagine all that goes away, and the reflection, the ownership of the data is on a digital format, and that's it. So what that really does is lower transaction costs, because it eliminates, depending on your perspective, it's either good or bad, but it eliminates the level of intermediaries required. And from a fundamental perspective, kind of taking a step back as well, and we think about the value of digital assets and blockchain assets generally, the number one most important thing that I think that the industry is going through is that blockchain allows the transfer of value in a format, whereas internet was transfer of information. But blockchain allows transfer of value in a way that, frankly, eliminates a lot of the traditional infrastructure that's built in place specifically to allow that transfer of value.
Okay, so what you're really saying is digital assets are convenient.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Terms like liquidity or transfers are big issues in the financial world. It allows us to transfer the value to someone else easier, right? Because from a traditional perspective, again, if you have a piece of paper, and if you transfer the ownership of the piece of paper to someone else, that is in real life what transfers value of it. And there's so many steps. There's lawyers, bankers, escrow, so many different things. If you have a token, and token is a common term people use to reflect digital asset, all you do is transfer the token to someone else, and inside that token is embedded data that not only proves that you own it, but it proves the history of the transactions in it. So there's no doubt about where the history of that value came from.
Digital assets face regulatory challenges and hurdles to achieve widespread acceptance and adoption. What obstacles must they overcome? And as far as people's experiences goes, have you received any feedback in how they can use and adopt it?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the biggest issue around the industry. I was a trained lawyer to start a practice for about 8 years at kind of global law firms before I transitioned to the industry for the last 10 years. I think one of the things that happened over especially the last 5 years is people assume that digital assets is somehow different than previous forms of assets. There was new ways that people thought about digital assets, implemented, and you hear the term DeFi, Web3, decentralization. Those are very sexy, right? Like, oh, I don't need the government, I don't need rules, I can just do this. And what we're seeing now, right, regulations are going up. And fundamentally, it's to protect investors and protect individuals from all the things that we just talked about. So from the transition of where it was, which was frankly ideas and amazing innovation that had some negative consequences. Now the regulatory structure coming in, and so I would not even call it regulatory challenges as much as it's a regulatory transition. How do we make blockchain assets, how do we make digital assets more mainstream in a way that the average person can actually use it, right? Not just to trade some cryptocurrency, but to actually improve their lives and improve their financial efficiencies. So I actually view the increase and the evolving regulations as ultimately a net positive that will allow the world to actually adopt the technology in a way that can actually, like literally improve their lives.
Before we wrap up, do you have any practical advice for individuals considering investing in digital assets for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, this is not an investment advice, but I'll share my opinion, which is like Warren Buffett said, like invest in what you know, right? So I think the biggest people make mistake in anything is like they hear someone else tell them, oh, invest in this because it's cool. That is absolutely not the right way to invest in anything. I think the most important thing is you have to be curious, right? There's a lot of information and data about the history of blockchain and understanding kind of the evolution of blockchain digital assets. So number one is learn and study, because there's a lot of information out there. And then secondly, if you do want to interact with it, there's different ways you don't have to go all in, right? There's ways to, in a very small amounts, experiment in a way that allows you to learn. And frankly, that's how I learned, is not to try to make money on anything, but really understanding, like from a legal, financial perspective especially, how does this new technology, how does this new asset impact my life, my career, my future? And that has allowed me and my colleagues in my company, and frankly, everyone in the industry, that is what they're in many ways betting on, right? Not that they're gonna make money off of it necessarily, but that this technology is so important, it is actually gonna transform the future of finance. So I think that's what gets really people excited about the blockchain technology.
Yeah, it's subjective almost. Yeah. There are like inherent individualistic advantages.
Yes.
Okay, great. Youngro, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Great.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yep.
The impact of digital assets on the market has been significant. capturing global attention. Governments and financial institutions face the challenge of balancing innovation and investor protection. Embracing the potential of digital assets offers exciting opportunities for growth and inclusion. As we witness the evolving landscape, stakeholders are adapting to this transformative force, shaping a positive future for the financial world. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will feature more insights and analysis. I'm Rashan Gidwani, and you've been watching Teatime Tuesday. Please like and subscribe for more. See you again.